Hey, it's Al. We're at the Kelly Writers House. It's almost like old times. Zach, can you pan the table? There. Oh, you can see. I think you guys could. Yeah, there we are. There are 4 of us at the table, and there's actually 7 of us in the room. And one of the people in the room is Shantine Akiyama Poe, who's here, came all the way from Boston. Can you get there? There you are, Shantine. Wave to your fans. There's a smile under that mask. Shantine's going to hang around with us. This is a triple header day, and Shantine is here for it. And who is the star of the triple header? None other than, zoom please, Erica Kaufman. Camera is slow on the Zoom. Is there a Zoom coming? Oh, no, I don't see it. Zach, getting there. Yay! Erica Kaufman. It's okay. I'm sorry, Zach. Erica Kaufman Day. It's Erica Kaufman Day. It's Erica Kaufman Day.
Thank you.
It's so lovely to see you. It's been forever, which is crazy because we usually see each other more often. So glad. And Erica tells us that this is her first in-person reading in forever.
Yeah, a very long time.
It's amazing. So anyway, Erica's here for our webcast. Erica's then going to stay around to do a poem talk. And Jack, whom I'm about to introduce, is going to join us for the poem talk. And then Erica's going to be here for a 6 p.m. Philly time poetry reading with probably a little Q&A at the end. So ModPo fans, please plan on joining us for that. So anyway, Erica, hi. Welcome back to the Writers House. Lainey
Thanks,
Brown,
man.
hello.
Hi.
I want to say hello to Jack Gieseking, who is here, come all the way from Kentucky, Jack.
Yeah.
How the hell did you do that?
With the airplanes, they're great. Yeah.
Those airplanes.
They're still doing them.
And
It's
I
shocking.
am going to ballyhoo with some close-ups happening. Ooh, Zach's getting good. This is a book by Jack that is, I was here was it 3 years ago?
Yeah.
You did a thing. I think Davey might have been the
The
host.
Planning and Poetics.
Yes.
With Erica.
Mm-hmm.
How
And Erica
cool.
was
Life
here.
highlight.
This is a book that you should have, and I now have, thank you, Jack, for the gift, A Queer New York, Geographies of Lesbians, Dykes, and Queers. And the date is like 80, I want to say, the last date is 2008. What's the first date?
83 to 8, from the AIDS epidemic to the L word. That's how I...
And that's the subtitle that I don't see on the front. It
They
must
told,
be
they
buried.
Told me that NYU Press told me that.
NYU Press
too
said
many
too
words.
much.
Too social sciencey.
Jack, welcome. And I'm sure that when Jack talks a little bit, he'll give us a chance to, or he'll have a chance to say what he's been doing with ModPo the last few years. Apparently, ModPo fan, which is so fantastic. And we have a lot of other people, and you're about to meet them because we're going to do a quick lightning round of favorite pieces this week. So you're identifying the favorite piece just to get it out on the table and very briefly saying why it's a favorite. So let's go. Lily first, Dave next.
New favorite is Skywriting.
Yeah, Nasser Hussain. Why?
I felt very lucky to get to meet and chat with him when he was visiting to make those videos. Like 2 years ago. I don't know time anymore. So cool just to meet him and chat about the poems, and really thinking a lot about borders and travel after COVID in a very different way. So
yeah, the book is prescient. It's really prescient. It's great. Thank you, Lily. Dave, favorite piece, followed by Amber Rose.
I just want to give a shout out to Flarf in general. I really like Flarf, and it's funny. It reminds me of the way it started was like the So-Call affair. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a professor, a physics professor, who was really getting annoyed at what he considered to be substandard academic publication review standards for postmodern journals. So this physics professor wrote this complete hoax article about quantum gravity as being just sort of like a linguistic construct. It was total bullshit, submitted it to this postmodern journal, and they accepted it. And then he said, oh, by the way, it's a hoax too. So it became a big controversy. And Flarf sort of started like that with poetry.com. And I like the way that they accepted that and just leaned into it, and then it just sort of like id-based poetry. But I could talk more about that later. So,
yeah, I mean,
Flarf.
if we talk about Mike McGee, who's sort of on the edge of Flarf, he's really also a combinist. Anyway, he's sort of an aleatory poet, but he's in week 10 because of Flarf. Yeah, they published deliberately bad poetry, to put it briefly. Thank you, Dave. Amber Rose, followed by Jack. Favorite piece, Amber Rose Johnson. You are a wonderful sight to see. We missed you last week.
Good to be seen. Good to be seen. Okay, my favorite piece this week is Tracy Morris's African, and specifically the video of the music arrangement with Val Jeanty that happened at the Kelly Writers House in 2008.
Yes.
I love watching this performance. I love what they do with their computers and with sound, and just the kind of remixing that happens is really fantastic.
Perfect suggestion. Thank you, Amber Rose. We're going to go to Jack, followed by Jake, and there's someone on the phone. Chris, is the person on the phone a regular?
It's Erica.
It's Erica Baum. That's great.
So yeah, you might.
How about that? All right,
might say
let's
so.
bring Erica up because I want Erica to participate in this round robin we're doing. So, hey, Erica.
Hi there. Hi,
Hey.
everybody.
Oh, Erica Baum. We're all huge Erica Baum fans. I'm a little embarrassed that we've done this like favorite poem week and nobody's mentioned Erica Baum yet,
Well,
but I think it'll happen.
I was going.
Oh, Lainey's like,
I'm
Lainey's
ready.
the dutiful student. Like, I was going to do that. Do I get
I
an
will.
apple? Okay, we'll get. Yeah, okay, we
We'll
don't
get
get an
there.
apple. Erica, would you be willing? This is unusual. Would you be willing? I mean, to have a ModPo poet on the phone is really cool. Would you be willing to stay on the line and listen to favorite poems for the week, and then offer your own favorite poem?
That would be great, except
Okay.
that I don't have anything prepared.
You,
so,
nobody has anything
I could-
prepared. Besides, I won't call on you right away, so you have a few minutes to think, and you could pick your own poem, any of them.
I think I'll just take the easy road and pick one of my one of
Okay.
my poems.
When I come around to you, Erica, you will do one of yours. Okay. So Jack, followed by Jake.
Okay, great.
All right.
I'll give a shout out to Jordan Abel's The Place of Scraps.
Yay! Recently added to ModPo.
Oh my God, amazing. Just beautiful. The spatiality of the erasure and the absence and the reclaiming of that, and had me thinking a lot about pronouns and possession, and Morton Robinson's beautiful book on the white possessive, that only possession can be a form of whiteness and white supremacy. So I was thinking a lot about that, banging around in my
Jack,
head.
I wish you were here every week. That was so great. Somehow, in a brief moment, you encapsulated everything. Would it be all right? I had on my list that we would do a little Jordan Abel in this freewheeling thing, so maybe you could help us lead that in a little bit.
That would be fly.
Great.
That would be
I mean,
amazing.
we would
Thanks.
start by asking you to say a little more about why you like it so much.
yeah.
Okay, great. Jake, followed by Kate.
I'm going to speak really fast because I have two things that I want to. First, I want to plug Erica Baum's Instagram account. Like, if you're not following it, oh my God, I so recommend it. It's
What
just
is the
like
handle? How does it go?
I don't know.
You
search
follow it,
for
but you
her.
don't know?
I can tell you.
Erica Baum, what's your handle on Instagram?
It's Baum.Erica
Baum.Erica
Something like
question
that.
mark? Okay, somebody will find it. We have a lot of computers
or
here.
Bound Erica, something like that.
Okay.
I'd have to look at it.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It just gives me like it's there's stuff there very often, and it's really awesome, awesome photographs and really trippy work. The city and text and so much more. I really love it. And I also wanna say one more poem from ModPo Plus, and that's Monica De La Torre's $6.82.
Good one. That's
I
a
don't
good
know.
one.
It's a funny poem, but it's also like it made me upset. Like I don't know if that's a reaction other people have, because it's an upsetting poem. It addresses matters,
Yeah, sure.
economic questions that are really just upsetting, make you feel like a hamster in a wheel.
This is really cool. I'm starting to think that what we should do for this entire webcast is just keep going around and have people talk about favorite poems. I also had this idea, though it wouldn't work for ModPo, which is really a survey, but it would be great if week 10 were all of ModPo. We could just have a course, or maybe it's ModPo 2, bless our hearts. That would be maybe week 9 and 10 and then more, something like that. But we're not going to do that. So. It's just a ridiculous thought. Kate, followed by Max.
My favorite thing is the accidental conversation between Bergvall's Via and Morris's African, and how they each trip over the beginnings of these totally different but intertwined epic ethno-historical narratives and traditions.
That's brilliant. Oh, I hope we get a chance to talk more about that. Thank you, Max, followed by Erica.
I was also going to plug Via because I think it, compared to the other poems for this week, it relishes the most in the aesthetic potential of the conceptual methodology, I find. So it's a really lovely piece born from a very specific and almost strict methodology.
Thank you, Max. Erica K, followed by Erica B.
I really love Rosemary Waldrop.
Happy Erica Kaufman Day.
Thank you, Al. I always love Rosemary Waldrop's shorter American memory poems.
Yes, great.
Because of the way that she uses the N+7 constraint to reclaim foundational documents and offer commentary on the rituals and impositions of citizenship. Mm-hmm. I would also say that in ModPo Plus, the Erin Moray poem, I think, is in conversation with the Waldrop in interesting ways, and that's under the Canadian sampler.
There's a big Canadian sampler in ModPo Plus week 10. I also just want to say we're going to turn to Erica B and then Lainey B. I also want to say that if we get a chance to transcribe this round, there are some, you guys are so brilliant that you're writing, there's like 2 sentences each about these poems that are so great because you're forced to condense that it's almost worth making a text out of that and putting it into week 10 as a thing. Anyway, I'm praising people too much. Erica Baum, which of your pieces floats your boats the best?
Well, I chose something which I'm throwing it out to everybody because I'm really curious to hear what people think about it. It's not, I wouldn't say it's my favorite dog ear, but it often is other people's favorite. And I'm always wondering, it's one where I actually wonder what it means to people. So I'm throwing it out very, very short. It's differently, and it goes like this. Yes, yes. How? I would not do that differently. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there because curious what people make of that one. And also I love I'd love to be here for Erica Day, and I love Erica's choice for a favorite too, really do.
Everybody loves Erica, especially Erica's. Erica B, will you stay on the line, because after we do this round, I'm going to keep you, and I'm going to open the floor up to people, to my buddies here, to ask you a couple questions about your work, okay? And then we'll ask you to hang up,
sure.
And we invite everybody to call us at 610-616-3208, 610-616-3208, and the Skype handle is ModPoPen. And we're in a break here before we get to Lainey's choice, and I'm going to ask who likes to. Lily, are you still doing Twitter?
I definitely can.
Okay, Lily on Twitter. Kinar, will you do Facebook? Do you do Facebook at all? Okay.
I can do that, yep.
What you need to do there is post something so people can come to it. Dave Poplar, will you do the ModPo thread? That's the forum thread under Webcast. And we need 2 people, Allie and Max. Can you do the ModPo, the YouTube chat? I'm getting nods. Allie, yes? Okay, good. Okay, so people out there, comment. Just do your thing. Find your medium. Lainey Brown, favorite thing.
I'm going to say Erica Baum's card catalog, because in her work, I'm understanding the technology of reading past, present, and future.
Wow, that was succinct. Can you say just a little more?
Well, some people might say that reading a book is a antiquated technology. I wouldn't say that, but I think it's really common now that a lot of people don't read physical books. I have a lot of love and nostalgia for card catalogs, but I never imagined them in the way that Erica Baum did in her brilliant photographs, where we have words, we have collisions between words, and we have words suspended, and they bring up all kinds of questions that take me back to Stein's Portrait of Picasso and History Teaches.
Fantastic. Thank you. We're going to go to Kanar next, and Shantine after that. Shantine will need a mic. Kanar?
Sure. I guess I'm kind of continuing Lainey's thought just a little bit. I wanted to, shout out Erica Baum's dog ear. It just had me thinking quite a bit about what it is to dog ear a text, and how kind of predicated that action is on the idea that you return, that you revisit that text, and that, you know, some core element's going to still be there and be the same for you, or at least be something that you can have the sense of you know, having visited, having been there before. And it seems like often, though, when you dog ear something and you go back, it actually has changed profoundly, or you've changed, or the thing that kind of bookends your kind of visiting of that text is different. So I'm just fascinated thinking about dog ears, thinking about what it is to kind of return to different moments in texts, and just, how we read things privately or publicly, and how precarious that kind of process is, and we can't actually nail down what our experience is or will have been.
Bing, bing, bing. Yes, Erica Baum is the winner. She's got 3 votes so far in this round, including one of her own, but there it is. Thank you, Kanar. Okay, Shantine has a mic, I believe, and Jason will be after that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can bring down your mask if you want to be clearer. You're far away from us.
I think, okay. I really like Bergvall's Via, especially after Al's office hours this morning, talking about...
That was so great, wasn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
The imperfections of translation, and yet the desire, the like innate human desire to continue to do so. And even just thinking about Erica Baum's poem that she just read, it kind of gets at that notion, I feel, too, of like trying to connect between people and understanding each other.
Thank you, Shantine. That was great. Okay, Jason and then Allie, quick reference to a favorite piece, and then we're going to turn to Erica Baum.
Yeah, I love, I have to say, this is the really hard week to choose from. And I'd say Erica Baum's Dog Ears, which I have always loved, and makes us think about the materiality of each occasion of text. And to go with that, I was really into Tracy Morris's Chain Gang and ModPo Plus. I loved all of Tracy Morris, all of Erica Baum. But the Tracy Morris work this week was really making me think of like someone, you know, ripping open like a loaf of bread and showing all the extra, both good and bad inside.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you. Allie, your favorite?
Hold on. I just opened the ModPo YouTube, so I'm afraid it's gonna give me 1 sec.
We're getting a little echo, and it's from you. We figured it out.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. I really love skywritings and dog ear for kind of similar reasons. Just like they're such wonderful visual like instances on the page too. And just kind of like scrolling through dog ear, like I want to just like wrap my like bedroom in just like different panels of how it looks. So yeah, just I've been appreciating the visuals on the page in addition to like trying to make meaning of like the combinations.
Fabulous. Thank you. Erica Baum, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, here's what's going to happen.
Thank you, everyone.
You won. You got 4 votes. I think 4 or 4.5. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask 4 of my buddies to pose a question about your work, and then you have the floor. You can answer any of them, all 4 of them, one of them, whatever. You're just going to hear some questions. All right? So it's going to be Erica, Kate, Jack, and Lily. You 4 are going to be asking a question about Erica Baum's work, and Erica then can decide whether she wants to answer. Okay, so who's first? Kate, are you ready for a question for Erica?
Sure. I am wondering, her work is so visual and about kind of found or accidents of text as they appear in the world. And I wonder if she ever transcribes that language onto a conventional page.
Okay, great question.
And what that does to it, if she does do that.
Love that question. Erica Kaufman and then Jack.
I was thinking about something a bit similar and wondering about, the myriad of ways of reading any of your texts and how you imagine your reader or how a reader might approach the different works.
Beautiful. Jack and then Lily.
I was wondering about your relationship with the libraries themselves, and what is it like to be there and to spend time with them and to spend time with these texts, and then what gets captured or lost and how it sits with you afterwards. I would love to hear about that. Thanks.
Great question. And Lily Applebaum, the last of these 4 questions.
Hi, Erica. Do you agree with our categorizing your work as conceptual or unoriginal, quote unquote?
Whoa. So, Erica, thank you, Lily. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead, finish your question.
Oh, just would ask, is this where you would file your own work in our syllabus?
Great. All right, Erica, you heard all 4 questions. You can answer any of them or none of them.
Those are all great questions, and they're all so different. And I don't. If I jump in, it's not because one of them I prefer over the other, but I might have more to say about some. I'm going to start actually with the first one about transcribing, because that's something I don't think people have asked me very often. I have tried doing that. I have a series of work I did where I photographed old police blotters, and I was looking at the narrative, the subtext sense of a narrative that you got from the little entries, and I wrote them all out because they felt so literary to me. But when I do that, and I used to do that a little bit more with some of my other projects, just to kind of get a handle on the material, but as an aid to the selections I was making. But I haven't done that in a long time. But I think it's a really interesting question about which would sort of lend itself to how I think about the words I'm looking at. And I'm going to jump to the next question about how I think about how people read it. And it's interesting with the card catalogs. I'd say that the focus, the way that there's a focus on some of the words more than others, for me, lends itself to a certain chronology of how you might approach the words. So you might read the one that's in focus first, and the one that may be behind it, that's out of focus second, and they kind of work together. It's one, and then it's almost like the one that's blurry is like a background retort. Trying to remember. Oh yeah, the library. So I have a lot of wonderful memories of going to my neighborhood library when I was a kid. It was very evocative, and we didn't really, for children's books, I really would go to the library and reread the books, my favorite picture books when I was little. That was how it was very much a part of our lives. And so I think that it starts from early childhood. And was there another question? I can't remember now. Was there a final question?
Yeah, Lily wants to know whether you're okay being in week 10.
Oh, yes. Well, I like to say that I'm happy to wear many hats, and I sort of embrace the different ways people might think about my work because they're sort of overlapping communities and different interests that people have. So actually, I'm happy with all the different ways someone might think about the work. I don't feel, because of that, like I myself have to be an adherent to any one of those groups. So I think that they're all inspiring to me, and conceptual ideas are very inspiring to me, but they're not really, I don't work from the point of starting with a theory and then working. I tend to work more visually and thinking and reacting, and then having it have an affinity or resonance with conceptual ideas. So.
Thank you. That was great. It's almost as if you spend every day fielding random questions and then answering them systematically. You're like a natural-born teacher. Erica.
Well, I've been influenced by all of you who are also wonderful.
Oh.
So I should probably get off the phone.
Yes.
Do you think?
Yes, Erica, thank you for calling.
Thank you all, and
it's great to hear your voice.
I'm going to keep listening.
Okay, thank you.
It's great to see you all. I'm going to keep watching. Bye-bye.
All right. That's Erica Baum calling us, one of the Week 10 poets. The number is 610-616-3208. Give us a call. We're going to take a quick round of social media to see what's out there. And then I think I'd like to ask, we're going to respond to it. Then I think I'd like to ask Jack to pose a question for the group about Jordan Abel's piece, if you're willing to do that.
Okay.
Or a couple of questions, just topics for us. These people don't need much prompting, Jack, so you just say a few words and then we'll go from there. Okay, so Lily, anything in Twitter happening?
No updates, but I just wanted to say I saw that our friend Tan posted that they were not feeling well this week. So just a get well soon out to Tan.
Yeah, okay. Tan in Europe. I think, what did we say? Prague? Something like that. Best wishes, Tan. I'm going to ask for Facebook, the forums in the thread, and YouTube, but I'm also going to ask Amber Rose and Jake and Max to respond in any way to any of the comments we're about to hear. So, Facebook, Kanar, is there anything happening there?
So we don't have anything in the immediate thread. However, like 17 minutes ago, we had a very relevant post, which I'll share. So Tony Renner has kind of put together an interesting piece up on SoundCloud, which is bringing together Bergval's Via with Eric Satie's Vexations.
Wow.
And Tony writes, I imagined a further musical backing and having just seen Eric Satie's Vexations mentioned in the new Velvet Underground documentary, I thought, aha, and kind of goes on to describe situating those two together. So if you go to the Facebook ModPo page, you will be able to find the link to that SoundCloud recording. So that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. Thank you, Tony Renner. Tony was or is one of the Chicago gang. Also I think was here in Philly for a while too. So long time ModPoer. Thank you. Okay, Dave Poplar, what's happening in the thread in the Coursera site?
Tony Renner also posted that link to the SoundCloud and a description of what he was talking about in the ModPo, in the ModPo forum thread too. So anybody can check that out. Susan Thompson asks, which current publications publish these Week 10 kinds of poems? Where can we keep up with them? And then two comments, one from Denny Stern, who says, isn't language and therefore translation dependent upon metaphor? So isn't Dante in Via understandable across time and through countless retranslations because his metaphor hits home? And wouldn't hitting home be a reference to Homer or baseball? Margaret writes, during Al's office hours this morning, when the discussion centered around Via, it struck me that all language is essentially translation.
Yeah.
Beginning from an infant's early cry, attempting to express to someone out there who can help, his, her, their critical need, that's a translation already. Then
Yes.
the parent, their sometimes feeble attempt to figure out what that cry is, that's another translation. It only goes on from there, including a kindergartner's attempt to communicate to people outside the family when they go to school for the first time, on and on and on. So in this, aren't we all exophonic poets in a way? And goes on with that concept. So that's what's going on.
Love all that. So when we turn to Amber Rose, Jake, and Max, they can respond to that, any of those things if they like. And Allie and Max, what are we getting in the YouTube chat? Probably a lot.
There's
Allie?
a
Sorry,
discussion
Max first.
happening. Oh,
Go ahead.
there's a discussion happening among Hannah Linden, Miranda Jubb, Caroline Davies, and a few others, trying to figure out what the UK equivalent of a foundational text like the Declaration of Independence or like the Pledge of Allegiance would be for a kind of conceptual intervention of the kind that we see this week. And there's some suspicion that these poems hit home a lot more for Americans who are way more steeped or kind of really like inculcated in the ideas of these texts, especially the Pledge of Allegiance, which we are all compelled to recite from.
Or used to be anyway.
day.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point that they're making. Allie, anything to add from the chat?
That's most of what's going on. There's kind of just more generalized conversation about nationalism and other outdated things people cling to, perhaps. So yeah, there's a lot going on just kind of with that idea in the chat.
Okay, so Amber Rose, Jake, Max, respond in any way to any of that. Let's start with Amber Rose.
Yes. All language is translation. Yeah, that immediately made me think about, I was just perusing my bookshelves to grab some things to talk about, but it immediately made me think about this line or the title of a book by a poet named Dion Brand, who's not in ModPo, but the title is No Language is Neutral. And whenever I'm thinking about language always as translation, I'm thinking about the histories of those translations. And so you're not just translating like the word in the present, but you're also bringing forward a history of other translations that have like compiled meaning onto the word. And so, yeah, depending on which word you're looking at, all kinds of things can be pulled out of the belly of a word. When you're thinking about translation. But the other thing that I wanted to throw out, someone asked a question about where to find other conceptual writing like this. And, maybe folks have some ideas about small presses, but I just it made me think about this collection, Letters to the Future, Black Women Radical Writing, which is edited by Erica Hunt, who is a fan favorite of ours at the Kelly Writers House, and Dawn Lundy Martin. But in this collection, there's lots of folks that are in ModPo Plus. Yona Harvey's in there. Just lots of really good folks. But there's a section called The Conceptual as Black Radical Imperative. And it's amazing. There's an introduction written by Dawn Lundy Martin, who has helped me think about conceptual writing in totally new and amazing and deeply challenging ways. So yeah.
What a great answer. Hold that up a little. Hold that up again so everybody can see it. Letters to the Future. Raise it up. There it is. Black Women Radical Writing. Fantastic. Thank you, Amber Rose. You're right on it. Let's go to Jake and then Max. Response to anything that you heard from chats and so forth.
Yeah, I was excited to hear about combining via with Eric Satie's piece. Just excited about the idea of it and what it made me think of. Well, first of all, it's always so lovely when ModPo folks who participate are doing their own creative work in response to what they're reading. I think it's just an amazing dimension of the ModPo experience. And also, I think, a way to interact and read closely the texts that are up here, but also just the desire to combine and go cross genre, I think is really strong in this week. And a lot of the conceptual poetry that we're witnessing is conceptual because it specifically veers off of just the text on the page situation. And Erica Baum's pieces are certainly like in that alley as well. And the question that comes up with experimental art, like, is this even poetry, etc. In this week, that question is centered around perhaps like text on the page and other genres that are like flowing in. And Tracy Morris's piece, of course, is in that as well.
Good point, Jake. I mean, you're really getting at what is essential to weeks 9 and 10, in particular 10, which is much more intertextuality than just plain old textuality, and interarts, intergeneric and interarts. So what Erica Baum does is photography and poetry. And there is so much of that opens everything up completely widely. And it also creates a situation where 1 + 1 = 5 or 6. When you find the right combo, such as that incredibly productive combo that Tony Renner tried, everything becomes possible. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to Max. Then we're going to ask Jack to lead us in a conversation about Jordan Abel. So, Max, what do you hear? What would you like to say?
Sure, I'll just comment briefly again on Denny's reflection about translation, metaphor, all language being translation, which I think is an idea that these poets are definitely like working from, and in fact, I think it's a concept that predates our present moment considerably. It's and also a lot of the work of these poets that we're talking about. I think that's something a poem like Via or a project like Via encourages us to like think even beyond that idea and to maybe think of language as an archival practice or something, or and thus like translation as an archival practice, or it encourages us to see translation as like one of many different kinds of practices in a larger field of sometimes very material, aesthetic and cultural and language production that kind of resist maybe saying something like, or that makes it harder to say something like, oh, all language is translation. I think these poets are kind of urging us to like the next level of thought there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Max. Amber Rose, are you still with us? I think you are. You've got to head out early. Do you want to just add a final thought? You're going to be at the Final Words webcast, I hope, on Monday at noon. So we'll get a real final word. But what would you like to say before you go off today?
I'll just say what I just put in the chat, which when you asked me or said that it was good to see me, I said good to be seen. And in the chat, I said good to be seen is a way of saying, it's a Black way of saying, I'm grateful to be before you, still here in the world. So happy to be with y'all. But taking off
can
for
we
now.
reverse the reversal and say the same thing about seeing you?
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'll accept.
We just love the idea that you're live. There you are, talking in the present tense with all of your bandages and everything. Be well,
Perfect.
Ambrose. Love to you. We'll
All
see
right,
you.
see you later.
We'll see you soon. Okay. The number is 610-616-3208. Don't be shy. Give us a call. Jack, throw out some ideas, and then I'm going to ask quite a crew. I'm going to ask Lainey, Shantine, Jason, Kanar, and Allie. That's a lot of people, so they're going to have to be brief in response to anything that Jack's about to say.
So I was just struck by how many poets this week, Hussein, Morris, Waldrop, McGee, Abel, are writing unoriginal poetry about the ultimate mythical origin geography of the nation state. And Abel, of course, is the one really addressing settler colonialism and spatial erasure, but also temporal erasure, that you cannot exist in the present as an indigenous person, right? So the totem pole winds up in the museum, everything. And someone said at some point in ModPo that this was anti-colonial. So I was wondering, is it anti-colonial, meaning that there's still the struggle against colonialism, or is it decolonial? The Undoing of Colonialism. And just want to, I wonder if anyone's ever thought about the really famous Tuck and Yang piece, Decolonization is Not a Metaphor. I've always wanted to ask poets what they think about this very famous, widely taught article. And then that gets to the end here, just thinking about these possessive pronouns I mentioned before. This idea of does the unoriginal poet refuse possession, right? Is that like who's doing what? Where does possession wind up? And are we allowed to different ways of thinking about possession and the possessive at the end of that? That's what I was thinking about.
Wow, Jack, can you move here from Kentucky? Can we just install you?
Yeah, everybody, we need more geographers. Geographers and poets should hang out all the time. We're good times.
You're a geographer. And this is like the perfect poem for that. Okay, so I don't think we've talked much in Webcast because I think Jordan's piece is only maybe a year or two, maybe just a year in ModPo. So who knows what's about to happen? But Lainey, Shantine, are you able to be put on the spot here? Is this a poem that you've looked at? Because if not, you can pass. So you're going to pass for now? Okay. So Lainey, Jason, Kanar, Allie, briefly, any response to what Jack just said about that piece? Lainey first?
I'm going to want to respond to the part about possession, which is something that I was really thinking about with this work, because this piece really raises questions about possession and dispossession and how is language a form of resistance, like carving out from a source text in order to extract a new version of that text, which is resisting the point of view of the colonizer, and in that sense, it's anti-colonial, or it's pillaging in order to reclaim. And this question of, are there different ways to think about possession? I think that's a really good question here, and I think that this work is pointing us toward a more indigenous view of collective responsibility for sacred artifacts, land, our world, everything, as opposed to, it's true, this belongs to a people and please don't take it and cut it up and move it away. And it's also true that there's a different view about possession that's not a non-Western view.
That's great. And I'll add a kind of cousin question to that, which is, can erasure as a technique be less possessive as a textual strategy? And can erasure resist cultural erasure? Or can it just ironize it and make us aware? Lainey, that was great. Let's go to Jason, then Kanar, then Allie. And then I'm going to invite Jack just to sort of say more in response to the responses, if you want, Jack. Okay. Jason?
Yeah, I think just to carry on with what's been said, I think in terms of both possession and settler colonialism is the question of like who possesses language. And I know especially in Canada, there's been a lot of attention to the kind of forced removal of First Nation youth through much of the early 20th century to boarding schools where they were prevented from speaking their own language and forced to speak only in English and forced to eliminate any sign of cultural connectedness to anything other than Canadian, and this happened in the United States as well. And so the question, I'm really curious because I watched the video and I really want to get my hands on this book to really see how all the different parts communicate amongst each other, and to see especially how in a way to what I think this is a relevant question for a number of the poets this week in terms of who, because English, and as we kind of confronted so far in ModPo, is more or less unmarked, and it's not considered a problem to be writing poetry in English. But here, the imposition of English on a people, and that being what one has to work with, is really kind of given emotional, powerfully wrought power through the taking on of a text and kind of needing to physically go in and remove parts of it, or to find one's own self within, or find a way of articulation within a language that is not one's own.
Beautiful. Jason, thank you. Kanar, then Allie, and then back to Jack.
Yeah, I would echo Jason. I've not read the full text, and I'm really eager to do so. And this has kind of reminded me I want to track it down. One thing I was kind of thinking about was just, okay, you know, what role can this sort of logic of possession play when you're sort of situated within this very long, very violent history of dispossession, and you know, what kinds of reclamation and sovereignty and things like that can sort of be claimed through the text. And I guess just going off of the page we have, which is spare, but we have the term like determination, which brings up self-determination and sort of the importance of just consultation and consent of Indigenous peoples, and like bringing them into conversations about matters that concern them, whether those are in language or whether they have to do with the land. And so, yeah, I guess I'm doing a little bit of thinking aloud. But one thing that came to mind as I was trying to kind of think about this text a little more is Norgesi Phillips saying that, you know, North America is basically a forensic landscape, and it's just gouged and sedimented with, you know, settler colonial relations, with, you know, the long history of slavery and its afterlives, and just sort of what can be done on that kind of landscape. And it seems like one site is to kind of grapple with that. It's language, and thinking about what language is missing, what language is layered over, what languages have been erased, and to try and kind of do some contending with that. So that's my thought for now, and just excited to read the Able soon.
Thank you, Kanar. And Allie Castleman.
I've unfortunately kind of lost track of what the initial questions were, just like listening to the conversation.
So ModPo.
And so ModPo. But just kind of paying attention to like the sequence of pages that we have excerpted in the syllabus. I'm just really struck by the kind of like logical progression we get between the pages, his new totems, his determination, his eagles and wolves, which just like the eagles and wolves as being possessed feels like they are instruments of like man's violence in a way. And then we go, I guess, two slides later, it's just kind of like deformations of his, which it's hard to kind of think of a kind of like more on the nose representation of just this like troubling, unquestioned idea of possession and who possesses.
Thank you all. Jack, do you have a thought? It doesn't have to be synthesizing of everything, just a further thought on this.
No, I think you've opened up my thinking a lot, and yeah, just to thank you, to think about it. And Allie's last comment, I hadn't thought about the progression of this and the logic, or the illogic too, right, of it. I'm trying to take it apart. Yeah, so I'm going to sit with it. I think it'll pop up later if there's anything.
Great, cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask Lainey we're going to talk about reading now, Lainey.
Yes, we are.
So I'm very excited about this. Let me just say that the number is 610-616-3208. I believe the line is open, and we would love another call before we're done today. I'm also going to plug, even though I'm going to plug it at the end, I'm going to plug Mondays noon. So ModPo 10 weeks ends on Sunday, and then on Monday noon we have a kind of celebratory final words. So we hope everybody will call in or write in, and we'll do final words. And it's always a great party, so please join us for that, noon Philly time, Monday. Lainey, what are the questions?
They're very concise today, but basic and huge. What is reading? How is reading new this week? How has our attention shifted because of what the materials are this week?
And I'm going to ask, this is going to be the usual fabulous colloquy with Lainey, but I'm going to ask Dave, Jake, Kate, and Erica Kaufman to respond.
All right, Dave, Jake, Kate,
and Erica.
All right.
Sorry, Dave, you're first. You got something on reading?
Are you ready? What is reading, Dave?
How can you ask a question like what is reading and not give that to us ahead of time?
I thought about it, but I feel like I would be breaking the improv ModPo rule. So I don't know. That's
He's being funny, Lainey.
All right.
Because he knows week 10 is
Look at
all
all
about
those
changing
books
our ideas
in the
about reading.
background.
He's probably got a bunch of books to read.
I see a lot of books behind you.
Yeah, can I?
You can
go
think
last?
about it. Yeah, I'll maybe it would help if I just add, what strategies do we have to use as readers in order to engage with the materials this week that might be different? And then the opposite way would be to say, well, what tools are the artists using this week? And we've already talked about some of them. We've talked about visual work. We've talked about the voice. We've talked about reading through time with translation and reclaiming historical texts.
What comes to mind when you say that is the discussion before on dog ear and how reading, in a sense, the way we read, especially in dog ears, it shows us how we actually change the material in the process. Like dog ear is a process of taking a closed text and doing something to remember your place in that closed text. But in that process, we actually change with it. I think I heard it described somewhere as like a quantum type of poetry, because it's like a quantum measurement. You try to measure something that's static, but then the process of measuring it changes it. So in a way, maybe this week shows us that, reading isn't just sort of like a passive thing of absorbing that information, but it's a process of like truly interacting and ongoing, evolving and changing the thing out there in the world that we're dealing with.
I love that. Reading isn't passive. It's ongoing and evolving. Thank you so much, Dave. Jake.
Yeah, reading isn't passive. That's a good point to pick up on. I'm not going to read too into it, but I kind of want to also. I think like just the thing of reading into things this week is really wonderful and intense. And if Erica's work is bringing us into the space of reading like labels on the card catalog things, or just again to come back to her Instagram account, which I mentioned earlier, like it's great like text that you see on the street and you start reading into it as poetic. That's a pretty awesome just state of mind to be perpetually in, to be on the lookout for this like awesome text, and to be on the lookout for meaning that speaks back to you. So you kind of constantly just reading stuff that's not on the page but is the world, and the world of text that is surrounding you, and the world of like things that go wrong. Again, to come back to Tracy Morris's piece, and things that are kind of random, but you read into them, and it becomes kind of like fun and exciting opportunity for constructing meaning.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're pointing to this amazing openness of the materials this week. We're all barraged by language all the time in so many ways. And if you think of that as an opportunity, that poetry is all around us potentially, that makes me think back to Cage's thoughts on music. You know, everything is music, right? So we're shifting our consciousness around what is reading, what is language, and so on. That's really helpful. Thank you, Jake. Kate.
I think all poetry illuminates reading as an agreement to agree with what language means and how it works.
Wait, can you say that again? That was so beautiful. I'm going to lose it. That was great.
Oh, I don't know.
The word illuminate. You said
it illuminates language as, or it illuminates reading as an agreement to agree with how language works and what it means. And so much of the poetry we've seen before week 10, well, particularly before week 9, was about disrupting syntax and grammar and sort of shedding light on the mechanics of our language and how how the mechanics build meaning. But in this week, we're dealing with so many familiar texts and familiar uses of language that we don't typically think about as having semantic meaning, like the airport codes. And these poets are really showing us the secret histories that are built into these kind of foregone texts. Not the texts aren't foregone, the meanings that we ascribe to them are foregone. We think we know how to read them. So these sort of like ghost presences that exist within and underneath them are coming forward with these chance operations and these sort of, you know, just like screwing with these texts.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I feel like the beginning of what you said, there's a poem and then it turns into a tiny dissertation of brilliance. Wow. Thank you so much, Kate.
Stop being so brilliant. How can we?
Erica.
Follow that, Erica.
I'm sorry. It's hard to do.
Yeah, that is hard to follow. And I think I want to bring forward something I think I heard Kate saying, which is that there's a way in which in weeks 9 and 10, we rethink how we read. And I can't help but think about Joan Retallack's work. And I feel as though something I've heard her say a lot is that when we encounter texts that are so either very familiar in that we think we know how to read them, or completely unfamiliar, you know, and I'm thinking of texts that feel almost illegible, like we don't know how to read this. It then becomes a question of how do you locate your geometries of attention? And it really becomes, you know, reading as an act of translating and also as an act of repetition, whereas each time you read or reread something, you're directing your attention on something different. And whatever that thing is, I think changes depending on what the text is and when you're reading the text and the world surrounding the moment that you're reading the text that you're living inside.
You did it. You came
What's
up with
happening today?
something equally brilliant.
What's in the water?
I know. What's in the water? Wow. Okay, I'm just going to repeat geometries of attention. That popped out at me, but all of it, amazing. Thank you so much.
And that's a Joan Retallack phrase.
Thank you to Erica and Joan.
And Lainey. Thank you, Lainey. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just take a dip into the YouTube chat, Allie and Max. Then we're going to listen to Rosemary Waldrop reading the Declaration of Independence piece. I'm going to ask Lily, Max, Shantine, and Allie to respond in any way they like to Rosemary. By that time, we'll probably be ready for some final words. Maybe there'll be a phone call, 610-616-3208. Okay, so first, Allie, Max, what's happening in the YouTube chat? Max?
It's a bit of a freewheeling discussion, as it's been all night. There's been some discussion about colonization, decolonization, flowing from the conversation earlier. Some nice words from some regulars. Sophia Nas says, "Hi, Jason." Earlier, Allison Fraser was also chiming in to give her greetings to everybody. Nothing too concrete to hold on to.
Okay, thank you. It's good. It's fine that YouTube chat is a chance for people to gather together. That's good, and it'll happen during Erica's reading tonight as well. Even though they'll be paying attention to the poems, they'll also be seeing each other. Allie, anything to add?
Yeah, just kind of in response to how is reading new this week. Allison Fraser said, "Does anyone else find themselves close reading the webcast?" And Maddie Ophelia responded, "Now that you mention it, yes, I do. ModPo has me in the habit of close reading anything with words or text. Even ingredient labels can have a sort of found poetry."
Yay. All right, thanks to all. Rosemary Waldrop is she is much beloved by ModPo people. Reverence might be the word for what she and Keith have done with their press, Burning Deck in Providence. Just a great person, Rosemary is. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to her N+7 rendering of the Declaration of Independence. And I'm going to ask Lily, Max, Shantine, and Allie to respond. So let's go to it. Chris, Martin, are we ready for the audio?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. What a lovely introduction. I'm not sure what is harder to follow that or to impersonate Schlesinger. You know, I think I have my tasks cut out for me today. I thought I would start out with sort of like a curtain raiser with a couple pieces from shorter American memory. They were my taking liberties with American sacred cows and other sources. You know. I read the collection of sort of snippets from American history that Henry Beston collected under the title American Memory. And then I just went to and played with all of them, mostly making collages and manipulating in all sorts of ways. I want to start out with and I called it shorter because, you know, his is a big book, and I reduced it to just 22 pages, you know. So this is, I want to start out with the shorter American memory of the Declaration of Independence. We holler these trysts to be self-exiled, that all manatees are credited equidistant, that they are endured by their creditor with cervical unanswerable rims, that among these are lightning, lice, and the pushcart of harakiri, that to seduce these rims, graces are insulated among manatees, descanting their juvenile pragmatism from the consistency of the graced, that whenever any formula of grace becomes detained of these endives, it is the rim of the peppery to illuminize or to abominate it, and to insulate Newtonian grace, leaching its fountain pen on such printed matter, and orienting its pragmatism in such formula as to them shall seize most lilac to effuse their sage and harakiri. That's the famous noun plus 7, S+7 method, where you look up all the nouns in the dictionary and then go 7 nouns down and put that one in. And it's especially nice with well-known texts because they sort of shine through.
They shine through. Oh, this is fun. It's so nice to hear Rosemary's voice. Lily, then Max, then Shantine, then Allie.
I think when you hear Rosemary read the poem, what really shines through from that last bit that she was saying, almost what feels like you're paying attention to what hasn't changed as much as what has changed, and you really hear the strange grammar and pronouns of these texts. I don't know, for some reason the we really stands out here for me at the first line of the poem, and obviously of the Declaration of Independence, and you hear the strange grammar of it almost because it's not making that much sense. So you're really hearing the structure to be so strange.
Thank you, Lily. Max McKenna?
Two comments. The first being, I was interested in by what she says at the very beginning about the constraint of length and time, and just, if you were to do the whole Declaration of Independence in this way, it would take forever, and what would be the value of that, and just how this idea of the shorter American memory speaks to the fact that most Americans have a very short memory of the Declaration of Independence. I don't think very many people know what's in there. I think most people probably confuse the beginning of the Declaration of Independence with the beginning of the Constitution. I think I do it all the time. But I think very few people know what comes past. We hold these truths to be self-evident. So we all have a short American memory of this document to begin with. And the second point I wanted to address was the idea, which Lily started to speak to a second ago, the idea of the original shining through, which is such a generous way of phrasing, or such a generous way of describing this project. Because for me, the project is fundamentally one of defamiliarization, right? It's trying to get distance from the object or the text that you're rewriting in this way. So the idea that there's some sort of like original core, this like irreducible quality to the text that shines through at the end is strangely like, I think I'm just hung up on these words shining through, because it's a very like aesthetic and almost like mystical way of talking about what the end result of what is a very mechanical and fundamentally like alienating process.
Thank you, Max. Love that. So it's time for Shantine. Shantine, I know you've got plenty to say, but what is your relationship with the Declaration of Independence? Is it in your head? Max is suggesting that we only know a little of it. Can you actually hear it in the music of the rhythm? And how close are you to it?
I think I wouldn't be able to recite it to you, but I think hearing the poem, I know that that's what it's imitating. And I think it's just hilarious. The creditors is really funny to me.
Creditors as opposed to creator.
Creator, yeah.
Isn't that like, do you need a critique of the U.S. beyond that? Probably not.
But I guess, like, to be a little bit personal, I was thinking about how when I was in first grade singing those songs, like Land Where My Fathers Died, I remember asking myself, my ancestors didn't die in this country. Why am I singing this song? And I think, over time, you just kind of get used to all of these like American texts and you just take it for granted. Kind of like what Max was saying, like we have a short memory of these things. We just allow them to be. And I think her defamiliarizing this text is really refreshing and helpful for us to like rethink the purpose of them.
I love that. Helpful. I mean, really helpful, productive. Those are positive words, right? And Rosemary's attitude, I think Lainey, who knows Rosemary pretty well, would agree with this, right? She's a positive, constructive. She's very radical, but she's not down about it. She's
endlessly curious, and she's a voracious reader, and
yeah. Highly recommend the poem talk that we did. Kate was in on it. Lainey. We were in Providence. And it was a poem talk intended to get to the origins of Rosemary's experience as a kid growing up in Germany during the Nazi regime. And if you really want to get to the very basis of this fooling around with these American texts, goes way back to that experience that she had in Germany. And so she's a very, very interesting person. And so now we're going to turn to Allie for a thought on this.
I love that she says that she's taking liberties.
Yeah, that was good.
With American Sacred. I don't know what she said. I couldn't catch the word American Sacred something.
Sacred cows, I think.
Yeah, sacred cows.
Taking liberties with sacred
Cows?
cows. It's almost like an N+7 statement in itself.
Yeah. But I actually found myself thinking of dropping leaflets while listening to this, which I think goes back to what Lily was saying about like maybe like what is shining through is the rhythm and the syntax. And I think that in very different ways, both dropping leaflets and this text kind of like, I don't think reduces is the right word, but it does kind of like reduce like meaning to just language. And so like what you are experiencing is kind of just like language itself and its syntax and rhythm almost, which makes me think of like liturgy or like religious texts, which brings up the question like how important or how functional is the actual like semantic meaning, which like of course in the Declaration of Independence is supposed to be of utmost importance, right?
Right.
And I think like what shines through here is it's kind of just language and something about how the like pomp and importance, self-importance with which it was written. The thing that lasts is the kind of like rhythm and sound and feel of the language.
Oh my God, that's such a smart comment. I mean, what's left of Jeffersonian periodic sentence, those amazing 18th century sentences, is the rhythm in our heads, not the semantic sense of it, because most of the semantic sense of it was bullshit, starting with we, what a presumptuous pronoun, right? Including all people who are created equal, all that stuff. So most of it, sadly, seems, let's just be charitable, irrelevant. And yet what we retain is the music, the poetry of it. And the Jeffersonian periodic sentence is pretty hot damn. I mean, they're amazing sentences, but that's what we have. Oh, Lord, that's great. And, you know, so Dave was promulgating Flarf earlier, and I think Rosemary Waldrop is not a Flarfist by any stretch. She's very sincere, actually, quite sincere, and the Flarfists are not sincere. But what a close sibling Mike McGee's homophonic translation of the Pledge of Allegiance is to what we just heard. It's so close. And what you hear is the same rhythm of this ridiculous, actually, I think 20th century, fake 18th century piece, a sentence that you cannot follow to pledge allegiance to the flag. I plug elegance to thief. Off Dionysius tastes of America. In tune theory, public, for widgets, hands, one day shun, S-H-U-N, one day shun, on dirge odd, ring the busy bell, with lip hurting, and just this for all. Hype ledge a legion to deaf egg, oft die unitely stains of a miracle, and too deep repugnant for withered spans, wan etching unnerved dog, inapplicable with liver tea, and just this for all. One more. I planned a neat myth, today's rags, ugly unified fates never heard of you, and 10 and 3 colonies or 50 nifty states, coronation, underground, indemythicable, palabricity, and just this for all. Okay, you guys are great. We're going to do final thoughts. And you have just the liberty of a little slightly longer final thought today. I probably will regret saying that. But we have a little time, so would love final thoughts, including Shantine. I want to give, because it's Erica Kaufman Day, a little extra. Okay, and Jack, who's visiting us from far off, a little extra on the final thought. So, Lily, we got to start somewhere. So, Lily, will you start, followed by Dave? Final thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like one of the great things about this week is the permission that it gives you to look at the language around you that, like, I'm sorry that I can't remember exactly who said this earlier. Maybe it was Kate, that's presumed to not have any more meaning in it than just the direct denotative meaning, like a street sign or the airport codes or whatever, to look at those through it with more intentionality, and not that you're going to necessarily become a conceptual poet if you don't want to, which I would never recommend if you don't want to. But like you can just think more about what you're seeing and encountering every day.
Thank you. I want to go to Dave and then to Jake, because Jake has to disappear. He's got probably some kids who are tugging on his shirt right now. Dave and then Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been thinking about something because of the conversation about geography and specifically Jason's comments too about the way English has been imposed upon indigenous peoples. And I haven't really fully formed this thought yet, but it's interesting here in Arizona, in Tucson specifically. There's so much indigenous culture and colonial culture around that. And the University of Arizona often professors begin lectures or presentations with land acknowledgement statements, saying that we respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on land and territories recognized by the federal government as belonging to indigenous peoples, like the Thona-Otham tribe has land everywhere. So it's interesting to me that there's this recognition about land, but now we're talking about, there's the colonialization is much, much more than that. When we're talking about like colonialism with language, we're talking about something that's not just about like the physical tapestry, but what's woven into the tapestry itself. So I haven't really fully formed this thought, but I just find it interesting. So maybe it's a good start with this land acknowledgement statement, but it just shows how most people are just focused on the physical concrete things, but not what's really going on under the surface that holds it together.
Well said, Dave. And there are at least 3 or 4 poets in this week, including ModPo Plus, that are dealing directly with this. You were going to say something else.
Office hours tonight, that's all.
Tonight at 11 p.m. Philly time. Thanks, Dave. Jake, followed by Kate.
I want to point out that most of the poets we're encountering in this week are around and are writing.
Like Erica, they can call us up on the telephone.
Seriously. So, and the really exciting thing that I want to just encourage all of our folks to do is to just find ways to follow the poets who are making the new work right in the now, whether it's through social media or even better in person. Like so many of my turning points, these really important experiences in my life had to do with reaching out to poets that I admire and going to see them and having these in-person encounters that I remember and treasure and have been profound. If there is a poem on ModPo Plus that really is profoundly resonating, and the poet is could be found by through social media, etc. I really want to encourage folks to reach out and write and say hello and be in conversation.
Jake, let's play you and I a quick round of whom we approached as younger people when we were looking around. You first, then me. Who'd you approach? Name one.
Oh, Jerome Rothenberg.
You went, you went to Jerome Rothenberg. He responded, and you guys have become friends. Yeah. And I'll do one, and then we'll stop this game. We'll do it later. I reached out to Sid Corman years ago, wrote him a letter. He was in Japan, Kyoto, and he wrote a long letter back because Sid wrote a lot of letters. And then I wrote another one, and he wrote another one. I have a big stack of Sid Corman letters. And, Sid was not the easiest person to deal with, but I created this relationship. And then he started to do email, and we had a bunch of email correspondence, and I really treasure that. That was a really great contact. So don't be afraid. These poets, they're not like millionaires. What they right, Jake?
To put it mildly.
They're not millionaires. But when they get a fan letter or fan email, they respond every time. I mean, there are probably a couple of assholes out there, but mostly not. Mostly not. And they love hearing from people. So ModPo people, go out there and find these poets and tell them what you like and tell them what you think. Okay, enough of that. Kate, Colby, poet, who's stack of fan letters being pushed through the mail slot as we speak. Kate, you're up next.
I can hear it right now.
Kate, followed by Max.
I'm still thinking about foundational national texts. And, I think I've often thought of Rosemary's piece or Mike McGee's, which one did he do? The Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah. As just sort of light, silly, playful pieces. But I was struck listening to her read and then Al reading Mike McGee's, how much more evocative and specific those ridiculous nouns like manatees, which kept recurring in Rosemary's piece, are than the empty abstract language that these texts that we're required to memorize as children are, and just how hollow and empty those words feel, particularly when you're a child learning them. But the manatee, it really says something and evinces something. So it's a pleasure hearing those.
Yeah. Especially with Rosemary's amazing accent. It really, she is an exophonic poet, technically, and so there, and the exophony extends to the declaration. It's great to hear her. Thank you, Kate and Max, followed by Lainey.
I just want to call quick attention to a post in the forums from Hannah Linden, who has
superstar rookie Hannah Linden.
Yeah, she's great. She wrote a Christian Bookian response to Eunoia using words where the only vowel is the letter E. And there's a whole conversation. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I would actually recommend you just go take a look. There's just a whole conversation developing around question of form and potentially of misogynistic content and things like that that I think are worth. I think some more voices could chime in there. That'd be great.
Thank you, Max. Okay, we're going to turn to Lainey, followed by Shantine.
I want to point to some things I really love that I recommend everybody check out this week if you haven't already. A shout out to all the Flarfy poets. We didn't mention Rod Smith or Sharon Mesmer, and also Nada Gordon, who's in the poem talk on Sharon Mesmer. It's fantastic. The video on Jordan Abel, it's amazing. The poet Amaranth Borzak, who's a fantastic poet in Seattle, in conversation with Al. I really recommend that.
We were in Seattle for that conversation.
That's gorgeous. And also the skywriting videos with Nasser Hossein, they're fantastic. And then I also wanted to ballyhoo the anthology of conceptual writing that I edited with Carolyn Bergvall,
yes.
Which is I'll Drown My Book, Conceptual Writing by Women, which is also kind of in response to Max's responding to this conversation about misogyny, which is where that anthology began, actually. So
it's a wonderful anthology. I'm sorry I didn't bring it to show it up, but to display it. But it's been ballyhooed. And what would be a webcast, ModPo 2021 webcast without using ballyhoo as a verb, let alone a noun? Holy cow. I want to ballyhoo Shantine, another superstar rookie. Did you really find us this year? This is it, right? Your first year?
On Reddit.
You're an exile from Harvard Graduate School, and we're going to spend some time today, find out more about what you're about. But so far, you're a ModPoer. Yes. And a wonderful one. Thank you for making the trip. What's your final thought?
I'm still thinking about Lainey's question, what is reading? And I'm going to be a little personal because I don't like speaking in generalities, pretending I'm not thinking of someone. My brothers have autism, and one of them is like minimally verbal, but he can communicate with us through text. And I think it's interesting, like our in the moment, non-text communication. I think it can be described as reading. Like I'm reading his body language. I'm reading what he's trying to say. And he's reading what I'm trying to say. And I think that that, I don't know, that's what I'm thinking of when I think about reading texts too, is that there's something within someone else that they're trying to convey to me. And this week makes it really obvious with all of the like defamiliarization of writing. Yeah.
Thank you, Shantine. And thanks for joining us today. Look forward to more conversations. Let's turn to Jason, followed by Kanar.
Yeah, I want to say specifically hey to Shantine, who was in my office hours, I think both on and getting off a train last Thursday, which was pretty amazing. And hi to Sophia. And I just want to say that I collect pop-up books. This is one that I have, which is a guitar inside a book. And I think that there are so many questions that come up with the like abundant array of material this week. But I think one I really want to draw attention to is that most of these works are works of poetic reading. They are, in being quote unquote non-original, they are original acts of reading and should help us to be empowered as readers. I think Jake said, like, with these poems, you can read into them. And rather than reading from right to left or left to right or up and down, whichever is your language's preferred textual orientation on the page, that you can go in. And I think importantly, like especially with Tracy Morris's work, we go into language that otherwise we might not feel that we have permission to dive directly into and play and excavate and view the kind of horrors and wonders that are embedded in the writing but are also embedded in our reading practices. And the more that we can kind of unrestrain our reading practices, the more creatively we can interact with the world.
Brilliant. And you said unrestrain, I think. The more we can unrestrain our reading practices, which is a fabulous paradox because so much of what we read in week 10 and 9 is constrained by strategy to allow us to be unrestrained. Well, there it is. That's the dream of the language poets not quite realized in week 8, which is to see if we could reverse subject and object of poet and reader. Let's push more subject. Let's enable more subjectivity on the part of the reader. And in week 10, Jackson McClough would argue this, less subjectivity, less ego on the writer and more on the reader. And that's, I dare say, democratic, or at least equalizing, and unrestrained is a form of liberty. Yay. Thank you, Jason. Kanar, followed by Allie.
Yeah, this permission to dive in, as Jason put it, seems so important to this week, and I think to just reading poetry more broadly. I think that's one thing I really love about poetry, and how it kind of welcomes people across levels of differing expertise and knowledge, interest, varying things. You can come to poetry from a lot of different, very distinct places. I guess sort of on a similar vein, my kind of closing thought was just thinking about Mike McGee, who states, "My pledge is juvenile," and I was kind of reflecting on that a little bit. He also mentions kind of how those sorts of substitutions within the pledge were something, he did as a kid with friends and also would later appear on The Simpsons, right? But that sort of shoulder to shoulder of the poet and The Simpsons, I think is actually really kind of compelling. And I think there's a lot to valorize in things that might be referred to or called juvenile, and I mean sort of juvenile in a non-disparaging sense, just sort of, what kinds of rejuvenation happen when we let go of these sorts of strictures that so often accompany learning and working with language and texts and writing ourselves. So I guess, be a little juvenile, go for rejuvenation and such. And yeah, that's my final
Great
thought.
connection. I love that. Allie Castleman, followed by Jack.
I think the kind of brief discussion on reaching out to writers you love really hit a chord in the YouTube chat. And we've gotten some requests for videos on writing to writers.
Oh, that's a good one. We could do that. Yep.
And yeah, I love doing, like, I feel like all it takes is doing it once, and then you're just like, why don't I do this all the time?
You've done a little of that. You've found mentors. I don't know about writing, but taking their classes and approaching them and being brave.
Yeah, I think also, like, if you're reading, certainly someone said, like, poets don't make a lot of money. If you ever kind of, like, come across a book and, like, the writer is not, like, on the bestseller list, but it really speaks to you and you write them, like, just amazing things can happen. And the worst thing is they won't respond. Yeah, so I'm just thinking about that. Would love for that video. I feel like that would be fun. And my last thing is my office hours are usually at noon on Wednesday. So I think I'll hop on a Zoom at 2. So people watching can feel free to come on and join me. And it's week 10, so we can talk about whatever we want.
That's great. 2:00 Philly time, which is a half hour from now. Allie will be there on Zoom. And you've posted the Zoom link in your office hour thread?
No, but I will.
Well, how will they know? How will they find it? Okay, go to Allie Castleman's office hour subforum and find the link to a Zoom at 2 p.m. And this is week 10, people. I mean, I'll say more when I'm closing here, but this is the last round of office hours until September. So go for it. Okay, Jack Gieseking, thank you. Thank you for coming, for being you. Would you take the floor for some final thoughts?
I was actually going to start with thanking all of you. I found you during the pandemic, and you are this cast of characters in my head. I know all of your voices in my pocket.
You mean you watched it like reality TV?
Your guys are so much better than a reality TV. You are.
How so?
You are a smart person's reality. Maybe like a poetry addict's reality TV.
Who's your favorite character?
Oh, that's it might be Davy, but I already know Davy.
Okay.
And we, but then Davy says stuff, and I'm like, yeah, the geography, bring in this, yeah. So, and we've known each other for a while. So, yeah. And then Erica comes on. I'm like, that's my friend. Erica's here. Oh my God, it's amazing. So yeah. And a shout out to Sarah DeLeo, who's on the board of a journal named Geohumanities, which I also wanted to shout out. We do, so geography is doing some of this work. And why are there no geographies here on behalf of Empire in the Ivies? After Harvard only ever got rid of one department in 400 years, and it was geography.
This is why Shantine left Harvard.
Yeah, well done, Shantine. And then Penn and everyone followed, and just Dartmouth has an undergrad program left. And
you're ballyhooing geography.
I am. It can be good stuff. It matters what you're looking at. I was thinking a lot about Dave's comment about the land acknowledgement, that it's bigger than that. And thank you for that. I was thinking about how we're talking about the Declaration of Independence, which is on colonized land, and settlers, the founding fathers, are claiming this, and who they're erasing too. And then the Pledge of Allegiance, which I went into a rabbit hole about, and no one mentioned it, but it was written to sell flags to public schools in 1892. It was written by a guy in a department store who wanted to sell more flags. Yeah.
Do you remember where?
No. Last name was Bellamy, but then it became 1942 Congress.
Right.
Yeah, and then 1945 it did, and then Under God comes in the 50s.
Under God came in the 50s.
Yeah,
there was no Under God.
What?
You know what? There's so many damn prepositional phrases in that thing.
Yeah.
Adding Under God, nobody noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess the last thing is, I was thinking about the footnote in Jordan Abel. And I think that was the last thing I was thinking about, because we didn't mention that. And I misremembered it. My reading of it, my very academic brain saw the footnote on every page, and it's not there. One page it says by Martin Baraboo, and then the footnote comes back, and then it disappears again. And I wonder what that's doing to erase and bring him back, and who we get to erase and bring back as well. Thanks.
Jack, thank you so much for visiting us. This is great, and we have more to do today, so I'm looking forward to it all. Erica Kaufman, it's your day. I'm so happy. We've been waiting for this. What are your final thoughts?
So for my final thoughts, I want to say a couple of things. First is thank you so much to Al and to Jack and Lainey and everybody. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be part of this community, and it's been a number of years now, and I feel like it's a highlight of my fall. I also wanted to ballyhoo. I was going to mention the wonderful anthology that Lainey co-edited, I'll Drown My Book. So I'll just make sure that title comes up again. And I also wanted to recommend Lainey's sonnets, which I think are in ModPo Plus, which are fantastic.
Daily sonnets.
Yep. And in the spirit of remembering, like approaching writers that you love, I'll just briefly share that I remember, and I had to look it up because I couldn't remember when it was, but when I was still working and curating the Belladonna reading series, I had Lainey Brown read with Ray Armantrout, who's another friend of ModPo, and the writer Marjorie Wellish. And I think it was the spring of 2006, and I remember very distinctly how terrified I was to write to these three people. And my co-curator, Rachel Levitsky,
who is not afraid of anything.
Who's not afraid of anything, taught me a great deal about, the fact that it's okay to reach out to people, and that, as Al was saying, the worst thing that can happen is they don't respond. I wanted to mention, this is kind of my second final word, but I'm teaching a creative writing course this semester that's also a political theory course, and I'll share the prompt I gave my students last week after looking at the Waldrop, and I don't have the prompt with me, but this is what my memory tells me. So the prompt was: find a document that feels central to your understanding of what it means to be a citizen or what it means to belong to a place. Perform an N+7 on it, revise, look at line breaks. And the poems that my students made were astonishing. They were so fascinating, and I would recommend that folks try it out. And I think you learn a lot about what it means to read through doing something like that with a document that you feel you're at least supposed to have some idea of. And then my last thing is I wanted to share a question that I'm thinking a lot about in this season, because I think the content of week 10 has really grown and changed in a way that I think is fantastic. And it makes me wonder about the relationship between weeks 9 and 10 and what the boundaries actually are between chance and aleatory poetries, and then unoriginality and conceptualism. So that's kind of a big open question that I would love to think collaboratively with others about in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed by the prospect of the rest of today, Erica, so it'll be fun. Okay, I have a couple of announcements, and then my final thought is really to read a kind of pre-final word from Hannah Linden, just to get us all in the mood for Monday's noon Final Words webcast. First, our Gabriel Ojeda Segay, Gabby, is getting married, like right now or in a few hours or whatever, to Jabril Powell. I've happened to have known Jabril since he was a little kid at school, because Jabril went to school with my kids. And so anyway, Gabby and Jabril are marrying. It is a big, big deal. Love both families. They're in Miami, I think. Congratulations to Gabby. Erica's reading is at 6 p.m., just to remind you. I have one of her books. This is instant classic. Oh my gosh, you should just read Erica's poetry. Final Words webcast is at noon on Monday. Please plan to tune in. Jack, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to hold up and ballyhoo your book again. A Queer New York, Geographies of Lesbians, Dykes, and Queers, and there's a whole lot more subtitle that they suppressed.
Yeah.
But you want to see what geographers do?
Yeah.
This is a perfect example of it. Jack, thank you. And
Thank you, Al. Thank you,
for the
Erica.
copy
Thank
of
you,
the book.
Lainey. Thank you all. You're so cool.
I want to thank Chris and Zach for everything that they do. I don't know how they were dealing with some weird chirping thing that
Yeah, what
was in the,
that?
but they seem to have mastered the damn thing. Thank you guys for not just this, but for everything. I'll say in advance that we are going to be on the road this spring. At the very least, we're going to be in Los Angeles for the better part of a week, and we're going to do some ModPo stuff there. So get ready for some travel. This is week 10 of year 10. This is week 10 of year 10 of ModPo. How the fuck is it possible that this crazy thing back in 2012 that was just, you should see the quality of those webcasts. Sorry, guys, but, you know, and you do. There's a whole archaeology of these old webcasts. We've come a long way, and I'm not going to be too 10-year-y right now, because what we're going to do is pretend this is actually the 9th year, 2012 to 2021. If you do the math, it's 9 years. It's actually the 10th season. I think because of COVID, what we're going to do is treat next year, 2022, 2012 to 22, as the 10th. And we're going to have a big party in person. I'm saying this, Lainey, I'm sorry, I haven't told you yet. In the spring of 2023,
Wow, fantastic.
we're going to have a big party. We're going to hope a lot of ModPo people will make the trip. Shantine certainly will. By then, she'll be living in Philadelphia anyway, right? You got to move to Philly. We'll get everybody back. So I'm announcing now that we're going to have a big TAs. We're bringing you in, okay? Max, I don't know if I can pay all the way from Germany, but we can talk about it, cost sharing on that. So stay tuned. Okay, so just to give you a hint of what Monday is going to be like, I'm going to read some final thoughts from Rookie of the Year, one of the Rookie of the Years, because Matt is also Rookie of the Year, Shantine's a Rookie of the Year. Hannah Linden. I really enjoyed the course. It'll take some time to digest it all. What a wonderful whirlwind journey it's been. I will be revisiting poems that I haven't commented on in the subforums because of lack of time, and I'm very much going to enjoy looking at ModPo Plus and the teaching supplements in Teacher Resource Center, TRC. It's an incredible resource you've built over the years. I'm a home educator. I very much align with the concept of lifelong learning and free access and sharing of knowledge and passion for learning. It's been a real joy to discover you all. And as a poet, it's given me much to consider further. I've always loved a wide variety of poetic practices and used different voices in my own work. But it's been enlightening to learn more about American poetic history. Hannah is in the UK. And the current scene. How lovely it's been to listen to the close readings and know that there are readers out there who trust that the poet knows what they're doing and are willing to go down a rabbit hole with them. So, in friendship and warm appreciation, thank you so much for sharing your enthusiasm, your knowledge, your joy with me personally. All of us have been reaching out to Hannah personally. A MOOC can be personal, right? And it has felt very personal indeed. Thank you for your warm welcome, your accessibility. I'm moved by your openness and inclusivity to be able to join you and the team through Zoom and through the chat functions on YouTube, in addition to comments on posts on the main Coursera site, has made it feel like there really isn't a huge distance between us all, geographically, socially, creatively, emotionally, or in our mutual love for and passionate involvement with poetry and what it reveals of the deep desire we all have to be moved, to be heard, to be challenged, to be appreciated. It's a marvelous gift you have given and keep on giving in solidarity and in friendship. Hannah Linden. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you all for staying with us today, week 10. Yay. Thank you, Shantine, for making the big trip, and Jack, the big trip, and Erica, the semi-big trip. Love you guys all. We'll see you on Monday at the final words at noon. Bye-bye.